listen to this man, because he has the authority, which he has that in Mark as well, but he just brings off the authority with a little bit of sass for some reason. That could just be me. But I really like him in Mark. Mark has slowly overtaken my favorite gospel. It was Matthew for the longest time, but because of how I just read him in Mark, it's slowly becoming my favorite. So Mark chapter 8, and we're going to start at verse 1. And it says, "About this time, another large crowd had gathered, and the people ran out of food again. Jesus called his disciples and told them, 'I feel sorry for these people. They have been here with me for 3 days, and they have nothing left to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will faint along the way, for some of them have come a long distance.' His disciples replied, 'How are we supposed to find enough food to feed them out here in the wilderness?' Jesus asked, 'How much bread do you have?' 7 loaves, they replied. So Jesus told all the people to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves, thanked God for them, and broke them into pieces. He gave them to his disciples, who distributed the bread to the crowd. A few small fish were found too. So Jesus also blessed these and told the disciples to distribute them. They ate as much as they wanted. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 large baskets of leftover food. There were about 4,000 people in the crowd that day, and Jesus sent them home after they had eaten. Immediately after this, he got into a boat with his disciples and crossed over to the region of Dalmanutha, someplace. Now skip down to, I was not going to try to pronounce that and butcher it, and even trying not to, I still ended up butchering it. So skip down with me to verse 14 of chapter 8. But the disciples had forgotten to bring any food. They had only 1 loaf of bread with them in the boat. As they were crossing the lake, Jesus warned them, "Watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod." At this, they began to argue with each other because they hadn't brought any bread. Jesus knew what they were saying, so he said, "Why are you arguing about having no bread? Don't you know or understand even yet? Are your hearts too hard to take it in? You have eyes, can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? Don't you remember anything at all? When I fed the 5,000 the 5 loaves of bread, how many baskets of leftovers did you pick up afterward?" 12, they said. "And when I fed the 4,000 with 7 loaves, how many large baskets of leftovers did you pick up?" 7, they said. "Don't you understand yet?" he asked them. Jesus, I feel like he has this conversation with the disciples like more than he should. Where is your faith? Have you no faith? This and that. All these like different like conversations that he has with the disciples. And still here, I feel like at this point he's kind of fed up with them. He is like done, like you have eyes, you have ears. Do you not understand? And then he makes them remember. Do you remember the 5,000? Do you remember the 4,000? And what's funny is the 4,000 just happened. It had just happened. We had just covered this. And the disciples, they are freaking out because they only have 1 loaf of bread. Another translation says Jesus overheard them. As in, they were like arguing amongst themselves. Like I pictured them in one end of the boat and Jesus on the other end. I don't know how they float that way, but that's how I picture it. And they're all like, "Man, what are we going to do? We only have 1 loaf of bread and there's 12 of us. We can each take a bite. 3 weeks without food." And they're like talking, and Jesus is like, "Do you not see who's with you? I am the bread of life. Do you not see who you are with? Do you not know who you are with?" And so many of us as Christians, we get so caught up in the forgetting who we walk with, forgetting who we serve. We'll talk a big game, we'll go out and we'll encourage other people, like, "Oh, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, God's got you." And then in our own personal life, we'll be like, "Man, I'm really failing because I only have 1 loaf of bread. I only have 1 nerve left. I only have 1 piece of patience left. I am down to my wits' end." Whatever you would like to say to know that you're giving up. But you go out and you encourage everybody else. The disciples went out and they gave the baskets. They gave so many baskets that they were able to bring some back. Jesus said, do you not know who you are with? Do you not know who you serve? Do you not see the miracles that have taken place in front of you? And they answered the question. That's like 12, 7. We've done this, we've seen this. And later on in the same chapter, they're walking along and Jesus asks, who do people say that I am? And some say, you're John the Baptist. Some say Elijah's. And others say you are one of the other prophets. And Jesus asked them, but who do you say I am? Peter replied, you are the Messiah. But Jesus warned them not to tell about him. A part of me wonders if the human side was not kind of taken over in Jesus. Because he's with these 12 guys all the time. And like he said, you've seen the 5,000, you've seen the 4,000, you've seen all these other miracles, you've seen me heal the blind, you've seen me, heal the lepers, you've seen me do all of these things, yet you're not getting it. In your own right, he says, I wake you up, I give you shelter, I give you food, I give you water, I give you breath, you have eyes, you have ears, you have fingers. You have all these blessings. Some people don't have all the blessings that you have. And you might think that you have nothing at all, but yet you still have more than somebody else. You might not have most like others, but Jesus says that the least will be the most. The least, he loved Israel. And let me tell you, he let Israel know that he did not have to love them. Deuteronomy chapter 7, he tells them, you are the smallest nation. I could have chosen any nation. I could have chosen any people to be my people. You are the smallest people. You don't have as many people. You're not really all that great. But I chose to love you. And he looks at you. He said, look, you don't have it all together, but I love you. I died for you. And yet you still neglect everything that you have. You still neglect everything I have given you. You don't understand, and yet you have seen it. You have heard it. Look, I have heard the voice of God, and still at times I'm just like, well, is he really listening? I went through a season where I even doubted, like, well, I don't know about this whole thing. Even though I had heard the voice of God, and he kept reminding me about that. Like, if I wasn't real, how can you hear me? If I wasn't real, how am I doing things for you? You see, you hear, but you take it for granted. You have all of these blessings. I have set you up in all of these areas in your life, even though you might not think that they're great. But they're great for where I'm going to send you. They're great for where you're going to go. Look, I went through tons of different types of hurt in my life, even though I'm only 22. But I've been hurt. I've been hurt. I've experienced different types of things. And it all had to happen so that way I can help the next person. Something that you're going through right now might just be so you can help the next person. The disciples saw what Jesus had done. And yet they had the guy with them. He was in the boat with them. They saw. Peter saw what he did the day that he called him when he was Simon before he changed his name to Peter. When Peter was all like, oh, no, man, we've been fishing these waters all night. There is nothing out there. We hadn't catch anything. And Jesus was like, okay, well, come with me anyways. And they go out to the waters. I preached on this a few weeks ago. They go out in the boats. And they put their nets in. And they had so much fish in both boats that they were about to sink. Fish and bread, fish and bread. And Peter, he was amongst the 12 here. And they're all freaking out over only having one loaf of bread. And that was probably more than what other people had on the land. They had more in the water than people had on the land. They had Jesus with them in the situation, in the midst of their worry. Jesus was right there. He was right there. He was right there. So many of us, we get into a situation where Jesus is right there, but we're refusing to look at him. Because we're so focused on the problem. The disciples were so focused on only having one loaf of bread, they forgot to turn around problem comes our way, our first reaction is to panic. You know, you have your fight or your flight, and then some people, they just panic. They don't fight or flight. They just don't know what they're doing. They just freeze. And the disciples, they have this one loaf of bread, and they panic. They don't even know how to divide it between each other without causing issues, you know. Well, I don't know. John's a pretty big guy. He might eat more than the rest of us. So we just throw him over. More bread for the other 11. Then again, Judas. Jesus been side-eyeing him pretty hard. Don't think he's going to be like much. He won't be missed if we throw him over. More bread for the rest of us. No. Jesus, he just interrupted their arguing. He's like, don't you know or understand yet? And I've preached on the word yet before. Yet is such a big word. Because you go to church or you go to these places and, you know, especially if it's like an old-timey church or even the newer day churches, actually, they do it too. But you walk up and you're doing your greetings with people. It's like, oh, how you doing? Oh, he's not failed me yet. Are you wanting him to? Are you expecting him to? The word yet means expecting. I'm expecting for something to come, or it's not come. I'm waiting for it. So are you waiting for him to fail you? Are you waiting for him to leave you with that one loaf of bread and all of those problems where he's not going to help you? So Jesus says, do you not even understand yet? You're not getting it. You're with me. You have traveled with me and you're not getting it. You have lived with him. He is following you and you're not getting it. He goes before you. He sets up your life for you. And you're going along this little path. And you're trusting him, and then like Job, the devil's going to come and be like, hey, I want to make him stumble. And God's like, yeah, sure, do it. Make him stumble. And then you start stumbling. And when you start stumbling, have you ever slipped on ice? Slipped on ice the other day. And I even warned Mom about the ice, which is funny. I told her, I was like, be careful, there's ice up there. The way back, I slipped on the ice. And in that moment of slipping, you feel like you're slipping forever, that your feet are never going to be stable again. You're slipping, I'm not going to pretend to slip because I'll actually fall because I'm that clumsy. But I'm slipping, I'm trying to get my balance. I got my balance, thankfully. That right there was a miracle in itself because God knows that I do not get balanced easily that way. And I slipped on something that I had warned Mom about. I had warned her about it. The disciples had seen the miracles. They had given out the miracle. They gave the fish. They gave the loaves. They seen it. They were a part of it. They knew what was going on. And yet, when it happened to them, they panicked. When it happens to you, you panic. When you start slipping on that ice, I tell you, it feels like an eternity before you are stable. When you do these things, you just kind of sit there first and go, okay, I'm good. You're almost afraid to walk because of the slipping that you just went through. You're afraid that you're going to slip again. The disciples, they seen things. I don't know how much more I can tell you how much they have seen. John even writes that there was so much that Jesus did that it could not be recorded because it would fill up all the books. There were so many things the disciples had saw, and Jesus, I just feel like he's at his patience. They have tested his patience so much, and we test his patience with us every single day. Because every single day we are put into a situation that we don't even thank him for protecting us from. If you drive down the road and you pay attention and you're not on your phone. No, if you're driving down the road and you're actually paying attention, I like to play a game, like if I'm like down the interstate, I like to play a game with whatever car's in front of me and see how many times they go over the white line. And I'm counting and like, okay, they got 15, and if they leave, then the next car, I see if they can beat them. I just count. And you'd be surprised how many people swerve on the road. I get panic attacks when I see, like, I don't care if you do it out of a light or something, but please do not put on mascara while you are driving 70 miles per hour. I like immediately slow up, like I am not going to be a part of that problem. That is someone who's not paying attention, and all the people who are paying attention. And everything can go wrong at a drop of a hat. I have seen so many things just fall apart. You think they're going good. You think you're walking smoothly. You think you're driving smoothly. You think, oh, don't worry, I got this. I've been driving for a whole 3 years and now I have a problem. I can do this. But you can't do anything without God. The disciples, oh yeah, we're just going to this boat with one loaf of bread. Again, bad planning on their part. They could have seen that before they got into the boat, but they didn't. So many of us, we can fix the problem before we even get there. They had looked at Jesus like, hey, you going to be hungry on the way over? Looked at everybody else, because everybody, when you're a kid, your parents ask you before you leave the house, go to the bathroom, we're not stopping. Get a snack, we're not stopping. 10 minutes down the road, Craig usually, can we stop for the bathroom? So often, before they got into the boat, if they would have just looked at their luggage before they got into the boat, took everything by itinerary, how many people were coming, how much food we had, they could have solved the whole problem right there. But they didn't. They didn't stop to think. So many of us can stop and think, like, hey, God, guide us. Jesus will be like, hey, guys, before we get on the boat, maybe get 11 more loaves of bread, because apparently you guys eat a lot. I don't really know the size of their loaves back then, but I know the size of loaf of bread today. Everybody could have done 2 slices of bread fine. But then again, these were men, 10, never mind. So, and they were just panicking, and so often we just get into a panic for no reason at all. Because the problem solver is right here with us. The problem solver that can multiply the bread, that can just reach down into the water that we're traveling on and get a fish. They had so many options of a solution, but they chose not to go to the solution. Because they did the one thing that we're not supposed to. They let fear overtake them. They got overwhelmed by the thoughts. They were they were in a boat with Jesus. Could you imagine being in a boat with Jesus? And I don't mean like a cruise boat, okay, because that's not what it was. I don't mean a cruise ship. Those are pretty big. You could lose Jesus on one of those. I mean like a little boat, okay, like a fishing boat. Could you imagine being on a fishing boat with Jesus and not turning around to ask him for his advice? For not turning around and even saying, hey, what do you think we should do? How do you think we should solve this problem? Having the problem solver with you, and you don't solve the problem. You don't even go to him then. The Holy Spirit is inside of you. Jesus is watching over you. God is here. And you're just like, well, I'm going to solve this on my own because I know what's best for me. I'm going to solve this on my own. I don't need the advice of God because what does he know? He doesn't know it. Obviously, he knows everything. But so often we get that human mindset that Jesus and God think just like us. That if we don't know the solution, they're not going to know the solution. And Jesus is up there, and he is just smacking you in the back of the head. Do you not understand it yet? Are you not getting it? Look at all these things I have done for you. You remember that night when you should have died but you didn't? Remember that night when you couldn't pay your electricity bill and then all of a sudden you could? Do you remember that time? Do you remember that random person? Do you remember this moment in your life when everything was going insane but one person made you calm? Do you remember that time in your life? Because you can come to me. You can go to him. His doors are always open. You can always go to him. He is right next to you. You are in the boat with him. But he's just sitting back. And he's watching. Because he wants to know, how long are you going to panic? How long are you going to try to figure it out on your own before you go to him? Before you say, hey, Jesus, I got a problem. And I You got an idea? Not one of them. So many of us, we will get into a group, and then we will let that group feed into our imagination of not being able to solve a problem. We will let that group like, oh man, I just got this like thing that's happened to me, and I don't know what to do, and everybody will immediately be like, oh, this is how you should solve it, or this is how you solve it, oh, this works, that works, this works, that works, but nobody will be like, have you tried praying about it? Have you tried taking it to God? Have you tried doing this? Have you tried doing that? Nobody will ever go to God first. We always try to fix it without Him first before we're finally at our last, like He's always our last resort we go to before we're like, hey, look, God, I got a problem. I got a big problem. I got a little problem. Or, hey, God, I ran out of gas today and I need help. I need somebody to come get me. I need to call my father to come get me. Because He's the person that you go to. I did not run out. That's a story I heard from another person today. But they called their father. Craig knew to call his father and get him to go to him. And what happened was, as the father was preparing a way to fix his problem, as the father was gathering up the things that he needed, the gas can and the gas, the father sent out angels and Mom to go and comfort Craig until the father could come with the solution. And by comfort, I mean it is like really freaking cold outside, and like the car without gas is going to get cold, so we went and gave him heat until God got there. Because that is what God's going to do. He's like, okay, I hear your prayer, and I'm going to send you comfort. I'm going to send you comfort until I can get the entire solution put together. Because sometimes things take time. Sometimes things just don't come together as quickly as you want them. I'm sure Craig really just wanted a gas station to appear right next to him. That did not happen. But sometimes things take time. Sometimes you have to wait for the Father to come. Sometimes you don't want to wait. The disciples, they did not want to wait. They immediately went into panic. And then they started arguing with one another. I can see it now. Well, Peter, you were supposed to bring the food. No way, John. You're on food duty, remember? Well, I blame Judas. And Judas is like, oh, no, I'm just in charge of the money because I said nothing about food. I blame Andrew. And Andrew's like, I blame Thomas. And Thomas is like, I doubt any of you said anything to me. And they're just arguing. And Jesus, a part of me thinks that Jesus almost wants to laugh at them. But then Jesus is so upset and so worn out by these 12 men anyways that he just immediately just blows up on them with a righteous anger. A righteous anger of, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that you guys are not getting it yet. Have you ever tried to talk to a 3-year-old? And they're talking to you, and you're just like, no, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. No, put the toy down. You cannot hit your sister with it. You are not understanding me. Go sit in the corner. And you're just not understanding it. So many times we are like toddlers to Jesus that finally he just blows up on us. And still, after he blew up on them, later on, he still has to ask them, where is your faith? What are you doing? Why don't you get it? Disciples, they see all these things. They know who Jesus is. And yet only one of them made it to the cross. Only one of them actually stood at the foot of the cross as he was dying. I want to be that one. I want to be that one that has so much faith in Christ that I know where I'm going when he goes. I want to know what's happening when it's going on. I want to have so much faith. Look, I'm not perfect. I promise you, I come across multiple problems in my day-to-day life, where my first response is to just yell or scream or get upset. Then my first response is not to pray. But then there are times when it is just so right there in your face that there is no other option to have but to go to the Father. But to go to him and like, hey, I suck as a person and I need help. I am undeserving of your love. love. I am undeserving of everything that you have ever done for me. But yet somehow you see me and you say you love me. Just like he told the Israelites back in Deuteronomy. He goes, I don't have to love you. There are so many greater nations than you. You do not have to be my chosen people. But I love you. I want you. And he looks at you. And you might be thinking, my life sucks. I'm a little person. I don't have anything in life. And God's like, good, I want you. I want you because I love you. I sent my son for you. And you alone. I would have sent him to die on the cross if it was just for you. Because I love you. And that's the thing that we have to understand. We call the people that we love. You called Dad because he knew that Dad would come. He knew that Dad would be like, hey, look, I'm off work. I'm warmed up at the house. I'm no longer cold. I'm comfortable. But despite that, Dad's like, I'm on my way. And he's like that for all of us. And God will do that for all of us. But like I said, it might not happen in your timing. Uncle Craig would have very much wished that Dad would have just been right there. But he was not. It was a few minutes away from the house. So really, before you go into panic, before you start arguing with the people around you, or even arguing with yourself, have you ever argued with yourself over a situation that you got yourself in? You're like, oh, God, you're so stupid. I'm like, yes, you are, because you didn't come to me. You didn't come to me when you could have just easily said, Lord, help me. And it's a simple prayer. You don't even have to get down on your knees. You just have to oh, God, help me. It's kind of like, the holidays are around. And we have family members. And right before they get there, all you can think is, oh, God, help me. Help me show patience. Help me show self-control. Help me not throw rocks at these people. Lord, it's rough. But he's right there with you. And that's all that you have to understand is he is right there with you. And you just have to say, hey, Jesus, help me. Don't be afraid to ask him for help. As humans, I feel like we get to a point where we're afraid to ask for help because we have been let down by so many people on earth. We just assume that God's going to do the same thing. We just assume that God's going to do the same thing, and he's not. Because it's like I preached last week. He is not human. He is not of this earth. He keeps his promises. There is not a promise he has made that he has not taken back or has broken. He keeps his promises because that is how faithful he is. Lord God, just come into our hearts. Lord, forgive us. Lord, forgive us of anything that we need forgiven for. Lord, show us the way. Show us how you can guide us. Be our first rock, Lord. Let us come to you first for any of our situations. Guide us in the way that you need us to go. Show us the way that you want us to go. Lord, in your name, amen. Well, I hope you have a good rest of the week. If you'd like to come join us live for worship, 10 a.m., 113. Oh gosh. No, I lost it. Okay, there it is. 113 Riverton Road, Gray, Tennessee, at the Gray Community Center for right now. Every week I've been doing so good on that. But 10 a.m. Sunday morning for worship, and somebody will, somebody will be preaching Sunday.